Emily Carter's life had revolved around unending responsibilities for the past 3 years. As the primary breadwinner of her household, she dedicated nearly every paycheck to covering her family's living expenses. From rent to groceries, utilities to Chloe's personal whims, Emily's hard-earned income seemed to vanish before she could use it for herself. Despite her sacrifices, gratitude was a rare visitor in her home. One evening, her mother brought up the topic of Emily's financial contributions, her tone sharp and accusatory. "Emily, I've noticed you've stopped being thankful for all that we do for you. You live here rent-free, after all. It's only fair you contribute." Emily froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Mom, I've been giving you nearly my entire salary for 3 years. I've paid for this roof over our heads and everything in between. Don't you think it's unfair to say I'm ungrateful?" Her mother's expression hardened. "You wouldn't have gone to college without us, Emily. Isn't it your responsibility to give back to your families?" Chloe, lounging nearby with her phone in hand, chimed in without looking up. "Yeah, you're the oldest. It's what you're supposed to do." Emily clenched her jaw, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. She glanced at her father, who sat silently, as usual, refusing to intervene. Her resentment grew with every passing moment. While her parents enjoyed their leisurely retirement and Chloe relied on her support without a second thought, Emily was stuck in a relentless cycle of work and obligation. Emily often wondered why her sacrifices went unnoticed. For years, she had put her own dreams and desires on hold to ensure her family's stability. She couldn't remember the last time she had bought herself something nice or taken a day off without feeling guilty. Even small pleasures, like dining out with friends, felt like an indulgence she couldn't afford. Yet, her family treated her contributions as an expectation, not a sacrifice. Her mother's confrontational tone only deepened Emily's sense of isolation. The constant financial pressure left her emotionally drained, and her once close relationship with her family had turned into a transactional arrangement. "Why is it that I'm the only one expected to carry this burden?" Emily asked, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and exhaustion. "I'm working full-time, and yet, I'm the one who has to sacrifice everything while you all get to enjoy life without lifting a finger." Her mother scoffed. "We've done our part, Emily. Your father and I worked hard for years to give you a good life. Now, it's your turn to step up. But that doesn't mean I should give up my entire life," Emily shot back. "I deserve some freedom, some acknowledgement for everything I've done." Her words hung in the air, met with silence. Chloe rolled her eyes and muttered, "Drama queen," under her breath, further fueling Emily's frustration. The emotional weight of her family's disregard began taking its toll. Emily found herself dreading coming home after work, knowing she would be met with more demands and no appreciation. Her once vibrant personality dulled under the strain of constant pressure. She started questioning whether her role in the family was truly out of love, or if she had been manipulated into believing she owed them her life. The more she reflected on her sacrifices, the more she realized how one-sided the relationship had become. "I'm not a machine," Emily thought as she lay awake one night, staring at the ceiling. "I have my own dreams, my own needs. When will I get to live my life?" Despite her growing resentment, Emily hesitated to confront her family directly. The thought of upsetting them or being accused of selfishness kept her silent. Yet, deep down, she knew that her current path was unsustainable. The most painful realization was how easily her family dismissed her struggles. To them, Emily's contributions were just part of her role as the eldest daughter. Her father would casually mention how proud he was of Chloe's carefree nature, while her mother praised Chloe for her charm and potential. Emily, on the other hand, was treated like an invisible provider. Her needs and feelings were secondary to everyone else's. Even when she managed to muster the courage to express her frustrations, her family would brush them aside, labeling her as overdramatic or ungrateful. Each interaction deepened the chasm between Emily and her family. She began to see the stark contrast between the life she was living and the life she wanted. The seeds of change had been planted, but breaking free from the cycle of dependency and guilt would require more strength than she ever thought possible. Emily Carter's childhood memories were a patchwork of fleeting joys and lingering sorrows. Growing up, she longed for her parents' love and attention, but their focus shifted entirely when her younger sister, Chloe, was born. Emily vividly remembered the day her parents brought Chloe home, their faces glowing with pride and excitement. "She's adorable," her mother cooed, cradling the tiny baby. "Emily, you're the big sister now. You'll take care of her, won't you?" At first, Emily embraced her new role with enthusiasm, eager to protect and love her little sister. But as days turned into weeks, the attention she once received dwindled. Her parents' lives revolved around Chloe, leaving Emily to fend for herself. The once cherished eldest daughter was now a shadow in her own home. Emily's parents seemed to shower Chloe with endless affection and indulgence. Her father would bring home toys and treats for Chloe, his face lighting up as he watched her play. Emily, on the other hand, was often met with dismissive promises. "I'll get you a toy next time," her father would say, but that next time never came. Whenever Emily voiced her desire for the same attention or gifts, her father's patience quickly wore thin. "Stop being jealous, Emily. You're older. You should know better," he'd snap, his voice rising in frustration. The room would fall silent, save for Chloe's cries as their father comforted her, leaving Emily feeling invisible and unimportant. Her mother's indifference only deepened the wound. Whenever Emily needed help or sought comfort, her mother's response was cold and detached. "Why can't you handle this yourself? You're old enough," she'd say, brushing off Emily's feelings. The scoldings were frequent and harsh, leaving Emily to question her worth. As Chloe grew older, Emily's responsibilities multiplied. She was expected to help with chores, care for Chloe, and manage her own schoolwork without complaint. "You're the big sister. You should set an example," her mother often reminded her. While Chloe enjoyed carefree days filled with laughter and play, Emily's life was a series of obligations. She would wash dishes, fold laundry, and clean up after meals, all while her mother doted on Chloe. Even small moments of joy, like finding time to read a book, were interrupted by demands. "Emily, come help me with the groceries," her mother would call, or "Don't forget to hang the laundry before you start your homework." It was as if her own needs and desires didn't matter. The disparity in treatment was painfully clear. On Chloe's birthday, the house would be decorated with balloons and streamers, and she'd receive lavish gifts. Emily's birthdays, in contrast, were quiet and understated, often marked by a simple cake and a lukewarm happy birthday. The favoritism and neglect left a lasting impact on Emily's self-esteem. She grew up believing that her feelings and needs were less important than everyone else's. Her father's harsh words and her mother's dismissive attitude shaped her into a people-pleaser, desperate for approval. She learned to suppress her emotions, fearing that expressing them would lead to further rejection or scolding. Instead, she buried her pain and tried to excel in school, hoping that academic success might earn her the recognition and love she craved. But no matter how well she performed, her achievements were overshadowed by Chloe's smallest accomplishments. "Look how well Chloe drew this picture," her mother would exclaim, hanging it on the refrigerator. Emily's certificates and awards were tucked away in drawers, forgotten and uncelebrated. Over time, Emily became adept at hiding her pain. She put on a brave face, quietly enduring the emotional neglect and favoritism that had become her reality. Yet, deep down, a quiet resentment began to grow, a seed planted in her childhood that would eventually push her to reclaim her sense of self-worth. Her childhood experiences shaped the person she had become, but they also left her yearning for a life where she wasn't constantly overshadowed, scolded, or undervalued. It was a silent struggle that she carried into adulthood, waiting for the day she could break free from the cycle of neglect and find her own path. As Emily Carter transitioned into adulthood, she hoped her hard work and dedication would finally earn her some freedom. Despite holding a demanding full-time job as a business analyst, she remained tethered to her family's needs. Her days began early, juggling household chores before rushing to work, and ended late, cleaning up after dinner while her family relaxed. No matter how much she did, it was never enough in their eyes. Her desire for independence was met with resistance. One evening, she broached the topic cautiously, saying, "Mom, Dad, I think it's time I move out and start living on my own." Her mother immediately frowned. "Move out? Emily, how can you even think of leaving us? We need you here." Her father chimed in, "You're not ready for that. Living alone is expensive and dangerous. Besides, who will take care of things around here?" Emily felt her chest tighten. "I've been taking care of everything for years. I can't keep doing this forever. I need space to grow and live my own life." Her mother's voice turned sharp. "Space? After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? You're being selfish, Emily." Their words cut deep, stirring guilt and doubt. Emily knew they relied on her financially, but their constant reminders of past sacrifices and veiled accusations of ingratitude felt like chains, holding her back from pursuing her dreams. "You wouldn't have been able to go to college without us," her mother reminded her one day. "The least you can do is stay and support your family now." Even Chloe joined the chorus, casually dismissing Emily's frustrations. "You're just overthinking. You're the eldest, Emily. It's your responsibility to help us out." The emotional manipulation was subtle, yet suffocating. Her parents framed her desire for independence as betrayal, painting themselves as victims of her ambition. They would alternate between pleading for her to stay and scolding her for even considering leaving. On top of this, her family's expectations only grew more demanding. With every raise or promotion Emily earned, her family found new ways to spend her income. From household upgrades to Chloe's hobbies, her salary vanished as quickly as it came in. When she hinted at wanting to save for her future, her father would scoff. "What future? Your family is your future." Their unrealistic demands and lack of appreciation left Emily feeling trapped. While she poured her energy into supporting them, they enjoyed a leisurely lifestyle with no concern for her well-being. Emily's frustration began to build, simmering beneath the surface. She could no longer ignore how her family's constant reliance on her was draining her emotionally and financially. Every attempt she made to assert her independence was met with guilt, anger, or ridicule. But deep down, Emily knew something had to change. She couldn't continue living a life dictated by her family's needs and expectations. The growing resentment inside her was a sign that she was reaching her breaking point, one that would soon force her to take control of her own destiny. Emily Carter had always believed that supporting her family was a duty she couldn't neglect. Her job provided financial stability, yet most of her $77,000 annual salary disappeared into household expenses. Despite her sacrifices, her family rarely acknowledged her contributions. They treated her income as a resource to fund their needs and whims, leaving Emily with little to save or enjoy for herself. The weight of responsibility began to feel unbearable. Emily's life revolved around work and fulfilling her family's endless demands, with no room for personal growth or happiness. She longed for freedom but was shackled by guilt and a sense of obligation. One day, Emily's company introduced an employee wellness program, which included access to a workplace counselor. Initially reluctant, Emily eventually decided to attend a session, hoping to find some clarity. The counselor, a kind and attentive woman, listened as Emily shared her struggles. As Emily recounted the years of financial strain and emotional burden, the counselor's expression grew serious. "Emily," she said gently, "what you're describing sounds like financial domestic violence." The term startled Emily. "Financial domestic violence?" she repeated, confused. The counselor explained, "It's a form of abuse where a person is controlled through financial means. It includes excessive demands for money, guilt-tripping, and limiting your ability to use your own income for personal needs. Based on what you've shared, your family may be exerting psychological control over you." The realization hit Emily like a wave. She had never considered her situation in that light, but the pieces began to fall into place. Her family's constant demands, their dismissive attitude toward her sacrifices, and the emotional manipulation all pointed to a toxic dynamic she could no longer ignore. That night, Emily lay awake, replaying the counselor's words in her mind. For years, She had shouldered the family's financial burden without complaint, believing it was her duty as the eldest daughter. But now, she saw how deeply her family's behavior had affected her mental and emotional well-being. The next morning, she gathered her courage and approached her parents. "Mom, Dad, I've made a decision," she began firmly. "I'm moving out." Her mother's eyes widened in shock. "Emily, don't be ridiculous. We need you here." Her father crossed his arms, his tone sharp. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" Emily remained calm but resolute. "I appreciate what you've done, but I can't keep sacrificing my happiness and future. It's time I take control of my own life." Her family's reaction was predictably dismissive. Chloe scoffed from the couch. "You won't last a month on your own. You've always had us to rely on." Her mother added, "You're being selfish, Emily. Who's going to manage the household? You can't just abandon your family like this." Their words stung, but Emily refused to back down. For the first time, she saw their dismissiveness as a reflection of their dependency on her rather than her shortcomings. Their unwillingness to acknowledge her struggles only strengthened her resolve. With her decision made, Emily began preparing for her move. She found a modest apartment nearby, one that would finally give her the space and freedom she craved. Though the process was emotionally challenging, she felt a sense of empowerment with each step. On her last day at home, her family's tone softened. Her mother pleaded, "Emily, please reconsider. We'll be lost without you." But Emily stood firm. "I need to do this for myself," she said. "It's time I start living my own life." As she walked out the door, she felt a mix of sadness and relief. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, she felt free to prioritize her own happiness and build a future on her terms. The day had come for Emily Carter to confront her family and take control of her life. After years of sacrificing her happiness to meet their endless demands, she had finally decided to break free. Her family gathered in the living room, sensing that Emily's tone carried a finality they hadn't heard before. "I've made up my mind," Emily began firmly, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "I'm moving out next week." Her mother's face immediately clouded with disbelief. "Emily, you can't be serious. We've always been a family. How could you even think of leaving us?" Chloe, lounging on the couch, smirked. "Good luck managing everything on your own. You've never lived alone before. You'll come running back." Emily ignored her sister's snide remark and turned to her father, who sat silently, arms crossed. His voice was sharp when he finally spoke. "You're being selfish, Emily. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? You know how much we depend on you?" Her mother's eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling as she tried another tactic. "Emily, think about us. We're getting older. Who's going to take care of us if you leave? Your father worked so hard for you to have a good life. And Chloe, she still needs you." Emily felt the familiar pang of guilt creep in, but this time, she didn't let it take hold. "I've supported this family for years," she said, her voice unwavering. "I've put my life on hold, given you almost everything I've earned. I need to live for myself now. I can't keep sacrificing my future." Her father scoffed. "You'll regret this, Emily. Living alone isn't as easy as you think. What happens when you struggle? Who will you turn to then?" Her mother chimed in. "We've given you so much, Emily. The least you can do is stay and help us. Don't be so cold-hearted." Emily took a deep breath, steadying herself against their barrage of guilt and accusations. "I'm not abandoning you," she said, meeting their eyes. "But I can't keep living like this. I deserve a chance to build my own life, just like you had yours." Chloe rolled her eyes and muttered, "Drama queen," under her breath, but Emily didn't falter. She had come too far to back down now. Her family's pleas grew more desperate, but Emily remained resolute. "I've made my decision," she said firmly. "This isn't about abandoning anyone. It's about finally prioritizing myself." As Emily walked toward her room to pack, her family sat stunned, their emotional manipulation failing for the first time. Her heart was heavy, but a newfound sense of freedom began to bloom within her. For years, She had lived for others, but now, she was choosing herself. She knew the journey ahead would be challenging, but as she closed her door, she felt a weight lift. This was the first step toward reclaiming her life, and there was no turning back. Moving out was both exhilarating and terrifying for Emily Carter. For the first time in her life, she was on her own, free from the constant demands and expectations of her family. Her small apartment in the New York suburbs felt empty yet peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos she had left behind. The initial days were challenging as she adjusted to the realities of living alone. From setting up utilities to managing her own budget, Emily faced a steep learning curve. But with each passing day, she found joy in her newfound independence. No longer burdened by her family's financial expectations, Emily could finally use her income for herself. She began exploring simple pleasures like dining out, redecorating her apartment, and taking up hobbies she had long abandoned. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of control over her own life. Back at home, her family's situation took a drastic turn. Without Emily's financial support, they struggled to make ends meet. Her parents, retired and with limited savings, found it difficult to cover household expenses. Chloe, who had always relied on Emily's earnings, was forced to confront the reality of their financial predicament. Desperation set in, and the family began reaching out to Emily repeatedly. Calls and messages flooded her phone, each one pleading for her to return. "Emily, we can't do this without you," her mother's voicemail implored. "Please come back. We were wrong." But Emily stood firm. She had spent years sacrificing her happiness and future for her family, and she refused to return to that cycle. While she sympathized with their struggles, she knew that her decision to leave was the right one for her own well-being. Reflecting on her journey, Emily felt a sense of pride and relief. She had broken free from the emotional and financial chains that had held her back for so long. Her life now revolved around self-care and personal growth. She spent her weekends exploring new places, meeting new people, and building a life that was entirely her own. Though her family's regret lingered in her mind, Emily chose to focus on the future. She had learned the value of prioritizing herself, and with each passing day, she embraced the freedom and happiness she had long deserved.